Hello everyone, it's Donelle McAdams and I'm here with you today for Come Sew With Me. And the project that I'm going to be doing today is called Zippity-Do-Done. And the Zippity-Do-Done is a new style of zipper that makes it so easy to work with. So we're going to have some fun today, and this is a little pattern that, I shouldn't say a little pattern, it's going to make these two cosmetic bags right here. And you can select what color zipper that you want. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. I want to thank you for joining me today. It's always fun to have someone to sew with. And so that product comes from June Taylor. And you will notice that it comes with the zippers. It also comes with the pre-printed batting. And then the other items that you would need would be my preference is the Starch Savvy by June Taylor. If you don't have that, you're going to be able to use Best Press or a comparable stiffening agent for your fabric. And then I also like June Taylor's Quilt Basting Spray. Now I'll tell you, I don't get any kickback. I can promote whatever I want, but I do like their basting spray. First of all, this can is all but empty. And I want you to see that nozzle. You don't see any nasty all around it. I haven't had to clean it out or anything like that. And I just use a little bit of that product to actually spray it on there. You don't have to use a ton of it. So what are we going to need here? So for this project, it is a great stash buster, okay? Now, I am not going to be using a stash today. I'm actually using a couple of charm pack kits that I had. This is called Limoncello. And if you're interested, we'll be able to set you up with a kit. And we need 8 5x5 pieces for this. And you don't really need to write it down because you couldn't do it without the pattern anyway. And then I also need 12 strips. Now I don't think I'm going to be using all 12 of these on the one bag. It'll be for both bags, and I'll probably have something left over. I think that was not 12 strips, 7, excuse me. 12 strips, the 2.5-inch strips. That's why I decided to just go ahead and use something that I already had. And of those 12 strips, I've already cut off or 7 strips, I've already cut off 12 2.5-inch squares. So if you've never done the quilt as you go method, this is not a method of joining your quilts. This is a method of stitching your project. So I have already selected my backing. This is actually going to be a lining when we do it. It's a backing as we're stitching it. And I have used my quilt basting spray and pressed that right on there. And so you can see the other side here has the numbering on it. Okay? So we're going to start by following the numbers. And I picked up the second side, so we're going to start with number 9 instead of number 1. So as you can tell then, there's 8 things that we're doing there. Now I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch seam. So I've got my 1/4 inch foot on there, and I'm just going to pick one of my squares and I'm going to lay that down right in that position. Now I've already pressed all of my fabric with that Starch Savvy, so it has a little bit of body to it. So let's see what we want to put beside that, because that's our first step. So I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to lay it right like this. And like I said, if you've never done this, this is super easy. It's a lot of fun. And you do want to pay attention to what you're stitching here. You don't just want to stitch all over the place, because this is actually the lining of your bag. So I'm going to stitch forward. Then I'm going to go ahead and back stitch since it's my first one. Not that it matters whether it's the first or the last, but I just want to get that on there securely. So I don't have anybody with me, so I'll try my best to look at your questions, but please do ask questions. You might be surprised someone else might answer your question. I'm going to take this and open it up now, and you'll notice that if I've done this correctly, I'm going to come right over to that line over here. All right? Now I've got to put another one there, and you're thinking, well, it must be that she didn't do it correctly. Well, I think I did, and it's not going to matter. I'm going to put this bright yellow right in that position. And I'm going to lay this down here. See where it's going to catch. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that and this is why I wanted you to come sew with me today. Because you can see that line's a little bit farther over there. I'm going to line this up and I'm just going to stitch right here. It is not going to matter at all. And for those of you that do template quilting, I am going to be doing some quilting on this before I put it together. And then this gets flipped back over like this. Now you don't want to do any pressing to this because it can have the possibility of taking your batting out of shape a bit. So all I'm doing is pressing them down with my finger, and then I can just take this roller, come over here onto my Sew Steady table and roll that. I'll come back and roll this one. And then I'm just going to flip this around this way and select another fabric. Ooh, that's pretty bright and crazy. Let's do that one. So when I come up to here, we're just going to go ahead and backstitch that one. I am using my cutter. I'm going to press this out this way. And you know what? I just remembered. I was supposed to stitch all the way around. So it's not too late yet. Let's do it now. So that then that way I know where I'm cutting. So we're just going to stitch right on this extra line. This is the outside line. I'm only going back because I went too far. There. And so now we're going to come up this line. Boy, I got to get used to that, don't I? I always go one more stitch. I'm using the normal 2.5, 2.4 stitch length, whichever one your machine has. These pre-printed are really fun projects to do. If you belong to a guild or whatever, this is a fun project to do as a group. So I'm coming down to that line because it angled just a bit. Now I'm using white thread. I could have used yellow. I think the white will be just fine on the back of that for that lining piece, but I certainly didn't want to use something like a black, because it is going to be, the stitching will show through to that side. Little stitch. There we go. But like I said, I had already sprayed the back of my lining piece and then laid my batting on that, and it does not take very much at all. If you're adjusting, make sure you're always turning that hand wheel towards you so that you don't get that thread all nested up and a mess underneath there. Now this does go like 3 or 4 stitches. So as I said, this comes with 2. Oh, already stitched that so I can cut. It comes with 2 sizes in the packet and the zippers for 2 of them. Now I can lay this back out right now. And I did 9, 10, 11, and 12, so it's time for 13. So now we're going to put a strip across there. So I'm going to take this strip right here, making sure that it's long enough. And then I'm going to just cut that off so that I don't have to worry with the whole strip. It was moving on me. That'll be fun there. And I'm going to just lay it a little bit farther down, just a little bit. And we'll stitch this on here at 1/4 of an inch. Always great to have that machine that stops with the needle down. So you can always, and most often, you can tell it to stop with the needle down every time. So while I'm pressing this with my little rolling press here, does anybody have any questions? I'll try to scroll back. Oh, a couple people want to order the kit. Keep watching. I'll tell you how you can get a hold of it. I see Bonnie on there. Bonnie's already purchased the limoncello charm pack. Okay, so I think saw everything there. And someone asked, why am I back stitching? Really no need to do that. I'm just doing it because of the fact that I've never done this project before, and I'm not sure if it's going to, pull when I know it's going to get stitched in the end. That's not a problem. But it's just like a better safe than be sorry. Doesn't really matter. I will tell you, if you don't have one of these little rolling presses, you need one, because that is pressed as smooth as if I had done it with an iron. Just because of the way that this is ergonomic, you get so much pressure when you press that down. Now, part of that has to do also with the fact that I have pressed my pieces with my starch alternative. So now I'm coming down here to 14, and I need another piece, and I think this time I'll use a gray. Oh, nope, I'm going to use the black butterflies. There we go. I think I've got it long enough down there. So I'll cut off that extra. And we'll just lay this on top. Always make sure that when you're going to fold it down, like this goes out, well, I can see that that's down there far enough to cover that. But you could have taken this, which I'll just go ahead and do, and taken it out just a smidge farther to make sure. But you always want to make sure that you're going to cover what you're flipping it to. So I just won't backstitch on this one because it's long and out there. So as I said, this is a great stash buster kit. It's going to be something that you can, you don't have to use a whole grouping or whatever. You can use all kinds of different fabrics. This is up just a little bit, and I'm trying to make sure I pull it down so that I can get that caught in there. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, we got it. All right. So there's that one. Give it a little rolling press. All right, now, I didn't think that, and I still don't think it does. I think I just hit it that way. I did not think that this had a direction, but I've got my butterflies flying down here and down here, so I'm not going to worry about that, but that would be something that I would look at the next time to make certain I got them going the other way, because like I said, I just looked at a couple of them and thought, nah, no direction, but it evidently does have a direction. Now we're going to flip this around, and we're going to put a piece up here. And let's see here. I think I'll use a piece of my bright yellow. So we'll lay that right on there. So these kits are pretty new. They're called Zippity-Do-Done. And you can make two. I'm making the large one here. You can make a large and a small out of the same kit. And as I said, it can be a stash buster, or you can use charm pack. I don't know how bright that looks on your screen, but I can tell you it's really bright here. Then I'm going around to this side and that bottom one. Well, let's see. Oh, there's one I haven't used. I didn't want to repeat if I didn't have to. Being the bottom, I may wish I had made that the black one, but that's okay. particular company that makes this fabric grouping, I like the way that they do their strips. They're you know, what we're used to calling a jelly roll, is their pinked edge is very, very fine. It's not much at all. Got to remember how far that stitches out. So that makes it very easy to work with. Some of them have the pinked edge that's so, the pinking is so prominent that it's difficult to work in. Doesn't really give you that full 1/4 of an inch seam. Okay, now it didn't say to do this, but I am going to do it. And that is, I'm going to flip this over and stitch back in this bottom seam, because I just think that will help a whole lot when I get ready to do the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch right on top of where I stitched that before. And I'll do the same thing at the other side. I want to make sure it's laid back, and it is. So you can see how that's quilted through, and that's plenty of quilting. It doesn't need any more, but I am going to give it some more. And even if you're not a template quilter, you could do the same type of quilting that I'm going to do. But that's one side of our bag ready to go, and we're going to just as quickly do the other side. Now, a lot of people do this together, like they do one side, then they do one block on one side, then go to the other. I think that takes a lot more time than just doing one side at a time. So now I'm not even going to look at that other one to see what I did on it, because I certainly don't want to constantly be looking at, oh, did I repeat that or what? Now, you can see here why I thought that was non-directional fabric. So, all right, so I'm going to lay this one right here. I'm going to take my butterflies, lay it right on top of it. I'm using just a regular weight, 40 weight thread today, and an 80 needle. You guys, you're probably yelling at the screen. Didn't you forget to sew around it? I see a couple of you saying that. You're right, guys. I did. I just get so excited there. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you've got your back on there. It's fused, but you want to make sure that it's in place. I know how I respond when I'm watching somebody sew and I know that they've done something. It's just like I just want to come right through that screen and tell them, no, you're going to make a mistake. Thank goodness you guys are there. I just looked up and saw somebody said. Did you forget? Yes, I did. This is just a little corner here that has just a bit of direction to it. And you can see I hardly changed direction at all there. So I recognize a lot of your names because you've joined me along the way with template quilting. But if you're new with us for some of our virtual classes, be sure to tell us where you're from. I know we've got some international people on here today because I saw some of your names. And so it's always fun to see where everyone is from. I'm located in Indiana, Marion, Indiana, north of Indianapolis. Today happens to be a very pretty day out. It's a little chilly when you're out there. Not really, but I can tell you if you're in the Denver area, the first part of June, I am going to be in Colorado Springs. So teaching classes there for a retreat at High Country Quilts. And it's a beautiful place. I've been there multiple times. You look out the front door of their shop right at Pikes Peak. I've never gone up Pikes Peak, but I have certainly sat and admired its beauty. And then in July, I believe it might be the third weekend, I'm going to be in New Mexico, in a city called Ruidoso. It's way down there. Oh, how I love my Sew Steady table. Probably hadn't said that yet to you today. Maybe I have. But just to be able to work on a nice large surface. Many of you know I've got a nice sewing cabinet that my machine could fit down in. But I really prefer to have it up and using my Sew Steady table. I don't think it's been down in the cabinet for over 5 years now. Now some of you, this is hard to do, is to pick fabrics, okay, to put together. Well, you can see those don't all exactly what you would say go together. They're all from the same group. But you just need to kind of close your eyes and go for it. So since that one is all pretty much a gray line, I am going to put in my yellow butterflies. And when I snip this off, I'll still have down here at the end enough to do some smaller pieces, which, you know what? I think I was supposed to piece those together and put them in here. Oh well, for the next one we can do that. So we'll do it on this side and not the other side. Uh-oh. So here's what I'm going to do. On this side, I will piece these together to make a strip, which is really what I think I was supposed to do on the other side. But that way, we'll know which is the right side. So I'm just sorting these out to see what I've got, because I know I've got multiples, so that I don't end up using the same thing more than I really want to. So let's start with this one, and we are going to take this one and I'm going to unit piece these, okay? So the next one here, I'm going to just take these two. I'm going to flip this up to make sure I catch all of that white, because if I don't, I just get another one, which I didn't, so that's okay. So we'll just do another one to use. And we'll take this one. I'm going to cut that out because I'm not going to use that middle one. Open this up. See what we've got here. Now if your machine tends to eat that fabric on the first one there, then what you want to do is use a starting block. And I'll show you that on this next one. So sometimes I've got a single hole on this, so it tends to eliminate that. But sometimes you need to use a starting block so that your fabric doesn't get consumed down into that opening. Now this fabric has kind of a frost on it, so I can tell for sure which is the right side of that. I love having a cutter on my machine because it not only cuts it, but it holds it down in there for the next step. And so what I'm going to do here is add in, I think I'll put in my black one now, because I haven't used it. You have to make this into a strip first, because that's the only way you could attach it. You couldn't just start laying them down and putting it together that way. So let's see, let's go ahead and put this one in, because it's not in there. All right, I think that should be plenty long enough here. We'll look and see. Nope, I need one more. Now I'm going to tell you where this patch block was supposed to go. It was supposed to go on the one I just put on. So it would have gotten by with 6. Yeah. It was supposed to go up here, which is a little bit narrower because it's at the top of the bag. But it'll be just fine down here also. And we could go to the ironing board, obviously, and press this. But I'm just going to take this and roll that seam. I apologize. I'm used to having Megan here moving my camera around. Okay, so we've got that pressed. So now we're just going to lay this, and I'm going to try my best to center that seam, which shouldn't be hard because right there's a seam. So let's get a pen and put that in place. And then come back up here and now I don't like to sew over pins, so I'm going to take that out. And then I'm going to kind of just give this just a smidge of a tug. We'll lay that back. Now you could also do some embroidery on a piece of fabric and insert it in here. I'm sure you could embroider it at this stage also, but I think it's easier to not go through the batting when you're doing that embroidery. So now we've just got one strip on each side here to place. I'm going to look and see what I put on the other one's bottom. And I'm going to put the same strip on the bottom. So when that comes together, and then at the top, it does not matter. So I was going to use butterflies, but I just did butterflies. This is the bottom. And this is fun. We'll use that. Okay, so bottom. Do you ever doubt yourself? You get ready to do something, it's like, that does not look right at all. Now when I go to quilt this, I've obviously got options. I could leave my white thread in. I can go to a gray. I could go to a yellow. I mean, I could do about anything. I think I'm going to use gray. So I've cut that off. And like I said, this is the same fabric that's on the bottom on the other one. I just thought when we put that together, that might look better. And I'm just going to flip this over right now and stitch on that line. Let's scroll through here and see if we've got any comments or questions. Okay. And let's see. We'll go this way. Since it's not going to take the whole piece, I wanted to see which color I really wanted because it's kind of different. And to be honest, I really didn't care. I used to be one of those that just, I don't know what you want to call it, but just spent way too much time making decisions on putting fabric together. And after you've been working with fabrics, you'll see that, you know, especially if they're all in a group, no matter what you do with it, they're going to look okay. And sometimes we get things looking too matchy-matchy, as we call it, and it's better to not have them so matchy-matchy. I think that's really going to look interesting. And look out, you guys, I lucked out. Look at that. Center, right up the center. You would have thought I planned that. And you guys know I didn't because I didn't even look at it. I laid it down and started stitching. Now the fun part of this is, this one is all with the pattern, but maybe you have a bag that you're making that you want to use this type of a zipper that we're going to use here in a minute. Well, you can get the zippers individually. You don't have to get them with a pattern. All right. So now we've got that part of it all done, finished. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly change so that I can do my quilting on it. You could do this same quilting with regular stitching. You would need to go ahead and mark some lines to follow. I'm just going to be doing it with my template quilting because, quite honestly, believe it or not, it's faster. So I'm going to put in this plate. I'm going to change my foot. You'll notice that my needle moved there, and it looks like it's going to go right down in there. What did I do with my screwdriver? I am going to take the time to change my needle because it's that important. I'm putting in a 90 top stitch needle. If you've not heard me say before, needles wear out in the eye first. So pay attention. If you start seeing shredding of your needle thread or of your thread, then your eye of the needle is worn out. It'll start shredding and then ultimately it will break. So let's see what I have over here for a gray thread. This looks like this would work really well. So this is a light gray. You can see it right there. Alrighty, so I'm going to take this down through and then I'm going to show you how I mark my fabric to get started. So I'm going to set this to there we go. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making a line on my fabric, and I can either do this as a diagonal, which would just give me squares set on point, or I can do it as a diamond. And I'm going to do it as a diamond today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this so that I have, this is my crosshair grid that I use for my ruler work. And I'm going to set it so I have the little opening right there on that intersection. And I am going to set that so that I am working with this line straight up and down that way. So I will then make two marks on here, two lines on here. And let's see if my chalk shows up. Yep. So I've got those two lines marked, and then I'm going to take my centering ruler to extend them. This is an iron-off chalk that I have emptied. I bought my chalk marker. It's a Clover chalk marker. And I emptied out the chalk and put in an iron-off chalk. It's the Pounce iron-off. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, explain to you, anything outside of the outside line is considered margin. So I can do anything out here in the margin. It's not going to be used, it's not going to be seen, it's going to be cut off. So that makes my work go a lot faster. So here is the outside of the margin. Because I cut my last thread, I really don't need to worry about it. I'm going to set my needle down in, and you would measure the same way, do the same thing to get set up, but you might have to use like a guide, a quilting guide, or you might just draw all the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure this because I want to stitch right on this line to begin with. So I'm going to stitch through that. I'm going to come down here and remeasure since I moved my ruler. Now you can see that seam there just kind of was like, whoa, look at me, I'm standing up here higher. That's because that's where a join is. So I'm going to just lift my foot and put it back down, and most likely I'm going to be able, after a couple times, to convince it to go right through there. You heard that little chop chop. Okay, now I need to stitch this other line before I move on, so I'm out here in this margin. Where's my line? Right here. So I'm in that margin coming to that line. Now I could go backwards, but it's just easier for you to see if I go forward, so I'm going to measure that. It probably will sound, but it's going to go right through it because the seam was in the opposite direction. In other words, the way it was creased. Now, I am going to put on this my 1-inch echo guide. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread. I'm going to set this underneath there. I'm putting the thread through that extension slot. I'm setting that underneath there and lifting this up. This means all I'll have to do from now on is to guide against my ruler, and I will have a 1-inch spacing. Now, the reason I'm going 1 inch is we already have seam lines on here. We probably don't want a whole lot more of those lines, so that's why I didn't go 3/4 of an inch. But it would be totally up to you. And again, you don't even have to do this. So I'm going to go down to the next one. You can see that that's right there beside that. I'm going to line my ruler up on my line, and I'm just going to go backwards. When I realign, I'm just lining this up beside there. Oh, my thread broke. I thought I heard it. Ooh, that really did shred. So if it's my needle, it'll do it again soon. I give it one more chance. So now let's look at the other side and see what we've got. Get my seam ripper. It looks like I picked up some lint. And I just cleaned my machine, so I probably stirred it up and didn't get it out of there, because this looks like lint underneath there. So we're back to the right side here. Yeah, that was a mess. Okay. So I am going to take this out back to like 2 inches, just because I need that thread to tie off. I need to be able to have about 2 inches to be able to tie that off. And those of you that have heard me talk about getting a good seam ripper, I really think that you do need to have one that has a nice, sharp, smooth point on it, so that you can get underneath there and get those stitches. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull that top thread up, and I'm just going to manually tie these. So I have to have a little bit of help from my seam ripper to get that thread through there. And then I'll come back later and secure those. So we'll go to that position. Which is right here. Fortunately, it's right in that butterfly's wing, so we won't even really see it. How lucky can we be? So now we've got this thread. I am going to bring up the bobbin and pull that out. Now it's short, and it's obviously almost impossible to get it with that echo guide on there, so I'm using my tweezers. Set that foot back down. I've got to go to this side since I turned it around. And we'll finish off this line. Now I'm out beyond, so all I'm going to do is in that outer edge there, I'm going to come across till the edge here touches the line I just stitched. And then I'm going to turn this, leave these threads long enough. Actually, I'll just go ahead and take care of them. Let me show you how I do that. These two threads, I'm just going to make sure that I can tie a knot. But I'm going to stop at the loop that you can see there. I'm going to take my side threading needle, put the point of it through the loop and right into the spot where I want that knot to pull down to. And I don't want the knot exactly on my fabric. I want to have a little bit of length, because I want to be able to pull the knot into the fabric, not leave it rest on top of the fabric. And as usual, one of the threads decides to stay and be stubborn. Okay. There we go. My knot's here, which I know you can't see, but I just popped it through there. And then just pull up a little bit so that it draws it, so you can leave just a space so that when you cut it, you're not right on the edge of your fabric or the flat of your fabric. All right. So now we're going to line this up. When this touches that line, because I went in the outer edge, I'm going to stop and line up again. I'm using a medium speed. I turn my foot pedal around. For those of you that have been with me for a while, you know that I turn the foot pedal around so that then I can just simply press completely to the ground. In other words, floor it, so that I have my stitch regulator of sorts, because I'm now regulating my speed by setting it to medium and then just flooring it each time. This goes a lot faster when you use the Echo Guide, because I don't have to constantly figure out where's 1 inch. Now I'm pretty sure I'm finished with that side. And let's go one more just in case, because it's sure not going to hurt anything. It's only going to be short. Now you can see I'm just out in the margin. And I'm going to go this direction now. So you can see those diamonds start to develop there. Don't do that sound. You scare me. Once you've done all of this, your bag is becoming a, let's just say, VB look-alike. Only I think it looks a whole lot nicer because you've got more going on with your patchwork there. Uh-oh. Well, we're not going to worry about that. I love it because you know what my machine just said to me? Re-thread and start. Okay, I think I will. But I'm also going to check my needle. I laid another one out, so we'll just change it. Now I'm going to tell you I'm not going to quilt the other side because I'm going to have this as a sample so that I can show one side quilted and one side not. So for those of you that are going, oh my gosh, how much longer is this going to be? Well, it's not because I've already thought ahead on that one. This is always a treat getting this in underneath here. But if you get it onto batting and you stick it down in there, it hooks to the batting and it'll pull sideways for you. See it coming there? So I can get that at least out to where I can get a hold of that thread. Okay. Alright, we're right in this gray. So you know what? This is bothering me. So this is another thing I'll show you as a little secret. Not a secret, but something I always look for. I am going back, especially since this is a bag and the inside's not going to show. I am going back to this busy part of the butterfly, and I'm simply going to start and reverse. Okay? That way I don't have to take the time to pull it in, tie it, or anything like that. And that could have been done up here also because it's pretty busy and it wouldn't have shown. However, my mistake was back there, so that would not have helped in any way, shape, or form. I was reading some of the reviews that many of you have left on my page, and I found it interesting that many of you said, "I like how she makes mistakes." But the positive part was you said, but then shows us how to fix them. So I like that. Because we're all going to do it. I mean, it's just going to happen. And, you know, when I'm doing something virtually, I can't do much different than to fix it. I can't just go on. So I've got my thread here, and that's where I'm going to join it. And this thread here is from something else. So I don't want to cut it until I know what I was doing with it. All right, here we go. So I will bring the thread up, and I will, right here in this spot, because I do not want to have, and you're going to have to come away from it to get it. I don't want a bird's nest on the back. So we're going to be right here, needle down, holding on to my threads with my template on the side here, and I'm just going to go forward a few stitches and back, and then later I'll just cut this out. And as you can see, there is no one going to be able to see that because it is right there in that busy spot of that butterfly. So whenever I'm doing some joining of something, I always try to look for spots that are going to be concealed so that I don't have to worry about it. Even when I'm joining decorative stitches on something, I do that. Now that piece of fabric there turned up, I doubt that it's going to be in the quilt or in the bag, but I'm not taking any chances on it. So I'm going to get my stylus here. Well, I guess it already kind of laid back on its own, didn't it? Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. You can see my diamond quilting there. And then I need to see here where we need to go. So we'll start right here in the margin. Right against the line, needle down. Now when you're doing that, you can probably quilt the whole distance, but my shoulder runs into my camera, so I have to stop a little bit sooner just because I don't want to make you guys seasick by hitting that camera. Come out in the margin, come over. I think that gray was a good thread for this. It was a good blender. I love the look of cross-hatching. I think it's a lot of fun to do also. Once you learn the fact that you can do your cross-hatching in more than just a square, that adds an element of fun to it also. And you'll notice I only had one time that it didn't go over those seams, and that was where it was directly right on top of a join, because we've been able to go over all of these others without any issues. And see, I just went by, right there's a join, but it wasn't directly in the join. I love being able to work in that margin and not having to stop and readjust every time. Now we're not going to be stitching that one, so I'm going to come down here and get out in the margin again. I'm going to release that because I don't want to cut that if it's not supposed to be. There we go. All right, so we're going to come down to this line right here. I have stable tape on the back of my template, so that's holding that in place. You'll notice I got a little bit off there. Again, not going to worry about it because it wasn't that much. And what I'm going to do so that you can see how I'm going to come back, see it was a little bit off there, but it's in a fabric, you can't tell it anyway, but I'm going to line it up with the previous one by coming to this and lining that up. And that will get me right back on. So yes, that's a little wider right there than it is right there. Life is too short to let some of those little things drive you crazy. Now, I'm not going to say if you took it out there's anything wrong with it either. This stitch right here, I'm just going to go to the back and give it a little tug. Notice it's where there's a little bit of fuzz too. Just give it a little tug, pulls it right back in there. I did this at lunchtime today. This is our first one because I thought some might want to, and I know some of you, it's almost supper time, but anyway, some of you might want to, if you're in my time zone, join us while you're snacking on your lunch. But we have so many time zones represented that that's probably not really gonna matter. So we are finished with the quilting, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut that thread, take off the echo guide, and so now you can see how that's all quilted. When I'm finished, I'll be able to press out that line. And so our next step is to cut on this original line that we went around there on. So now I've got to remember where that line is because we've got a lot of lines on here. So let's see what we've got. I am going to cut the other one. This is just a last minute thought, and I think it will work just fine. I'm going to cut the other one just, let me think now. I got to read the directions. Can't remember whether I have to add the seam allowance or it's in there. Let's see. So here's what it says. Trim the bag pieces just to the outside of the stitching. Okay, so I think I'm fine. Scared myself for a second. And if you don't have a good pair of scissors, I'm going to encourage you that Mother's Day is Sunday. And if you're a man watching this, you don't need any reason, just go buy them. I love my 8-inch gingers when I'm doing something like this, or my serrated scissors because they grab onto the fabric. But I'm just cutting right up to that line. Now this is the one that I did not quilt, okay? And so I'm going to tell you, if you quilt one like I did, you may want to put, before you go to quilt it, now that I've done one, you may want to go ahead and draw that line on there first before you start quilting, because then you've got so many lines you can't see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my guide on that other one, because as I said, I'm keeping this so I can show one side quilted and one side not. When we have samples, we try to make them work for both or multiple purposes. I shouldn't say both, but multiple purposes. So where am I going after this? Guess I'm going right there. So you could either stitch that in a different color or just go ahead and take a iron off marker and put it right on top of your stitching. Alrighty. So now I'm going to take this and find where that original stitching was. And it's so much easier now that I've got a little pattern here. So it's right here and right here. If you were up close with me on this, you'd be shocked at how hard this is to see. There we go. And then this one is the long line along here. Here. And then here. So I'm almost there. And then it goes in here to there. And then it's this one. As you can tell, my marker's all but dead, but I can still see. Okay. So now outside of that line. Now that's a pretty big scrap, and I will tell you, if you just get yourself either a trash can or a little basket or something, throw those pieces in it, and after a while you'll have enough to stuff a dog bed or a cat bed, and if you don't need it, the shelter does. And stuffing that means that you can just go and really just buy like a pillowcase, an inexpensive pillowcase, throw those stuffings in, and sew across the end, and done. And they will love it at the shelter. But like There's not much of anything I can do with this, but that's a pretty good wad of fabric to put inside something like that. All right, now I'm not going to take the time to do this since we're showing you how to do it, but this is where they recommend that you go ahead and zigzag or overcast stitch around the edge. You could serge it, but you've got a lot of ins and outs there that might make that a little bit difficult. So I would just go ahead and do like an overcast stitch or a zigzag. So next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting on that zipper. So I am going to change to a black thread. And obviously I have to set my machine back. So if you need to make a quick run to wherever, I'm going to be doing this for a couple minutes. So you would have a time there you could do that. Sometimes when I get thread out, I think it's black and it's actually blue, but I do believe this is black. I'm using a black zipper. You can put that in with, white thread so it shows. I am going to do a decorative stitch on this edge, which you'll see, but for the first part I'm putting in for the zipper. So I'm going to take this one off. Actually, no, I'm leaving that one on. It's the foot that comes off. Now this zipper goes in so super simple. I'm going to use my decorative foot so that you'll be able to see that red line there, how easy it is to be putting this in. So this is my back, and these are the Zippity-Do zippers, okay? This one is for my small bag. This one is for this size bag that I'm using right here. Here's my zipper pull. And what I'm going to be doing, first of all, is taking another peek at the instructs so that I get it on there correctly. And remember, you probably are going to want to do something around this outer edge. But I'm going to center it just like this. And I'm putting that clear up so that it touches up there beside that zipper. So we're going to come over here, and I have that red line, so I'm going to put it right here. And then I'm going to adjust my needle position so that it goes over. You can see my needle moving I have 91 needle positions on this machine, so it shouldn't be too hard. So once I've got that there, I've got my fabric right up against here. You see how that is? I'm putting this back down, putting it off the edge. It's actually on the zipper, but off the edge of my fabric, and I can use that red line to guide by. Now once I've got that in there, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to lay that in, and I want to make sure that this distance stays the same. Okay, so this is what I'm checking here. So now I'm just following that little red dot. You can see how down here it's getting wider, so I'm going to stop and let it hold that needle for me. Making sure that I've got my zipper tab here on the top. Sew off the edge a little bit and go ahead and cut it. Now, is that like the Zippity-Do-Dah for real? Okay. Now, what you can do is you can sew a decorative stitch on here. You could put a trim on here. You could insert trims on any of these. You can do whatever you want to embellish this. I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to get my back part. And the thing you have to do is get these matched up. Okay? So when you're putting this together, did I just do the bottom part? I did. Oh, I can't believe this, you guys. I did. This is the gusset right here. Oh boy, you guys are going to have to be patient with Donelle today. Come sew with me is not going to be fun for you. I am so sorry, but you can see how easy this is going to be to pick out. Okay? Because all I'm going to do is go about every 5th or 6th stitch on this piece. Man, if this wasn't live TV, I could just edit this part out, but all the mistakes I make, you guys, seriously, this is how it works. You won't make them. Because when you get to that step, you're going to go, I don't want to do the same thing she did. I'm going to check that because she didn't check it. And you'll be able to skip all of those mistakes. Because guess what? Your teacher made them for you. I need to make it wider too. You can see I didn't get it wide enough. So let's go back to the right side now and get a hold of that thread. And pull it out. And then I just use my lint roller. Looks like it needs the paper changed. It's not so sticky right now. There we go. So it goes on this side, and I'm going to change to a black bobbin thread. And I'm going to move my needle over just a little bit more. And this time we'll put it on the correct edge of the zipper. or of the bag. Now you can pin right through that fabric, so if you wanted to pin that, that's not a problem. You can pin right through this fabric. Well, come on, I want to get it right on that red. There we go. So we've put that on there. It caught much better on the back side that time. So I'm going to flip this around. It's amazing how much difference matching bobbin will do for your project. Those little white threads didn't look so good. Oops, there went my quilting thread. So now what I need to do is get this in here so it's straight across. And we'll see what we've got down at the other end. Well, we're going to stitch a little bit and then we're going to see what we need to adjust because we've got that straight across there. Yeah. I think our quilting drew it up just a little bit, but we'll make sure we get that seam right. All right, so you can see right now our zipper is not committed to one side or the other. So I'm coming down here off of the edge just a little bit, and because this is a what they call a nylon zipper, we're going to be fine. But we do want to I'm going to put it in the center needle position. We do want to stitch across there and back. And I do that slowly just because I don't want to have any accidents there. And then this one down here is actually going to get cut off. So we're going to stitch across that. And I'm not going to use my good Ginger scissors to cut through that zipper. I am going to use some of my paper scissors. So that's what we have left. And obviously at this point I could still choose to, do my stitching around the edge or whatever. I am going to straight stitch this close to the edge. I could zigzag, I could do an overcast. But it's just those sides that haven't been stitched. This is going to form what we call a gusset at the bottom of the bag. This is the easiest way to do it, is to actually cut out a square. Now the bottom's already been stitched, so I'm just going to come to the other side. I have so many uses for bags like this that have nothing to do with cosmetics. They call them cosmetic bags, but the little one, I will probably use it to keep all of my my cords for my phone charger and my iPad charger and all of that kind of stuff. Now when we get to here, I'm just going to go across because I can do that. It's amazing how many cords you get, and the ends for the chargers and all of that kind of stuff, and I find it's just easier to keep them all together. And if you want to keep them different colored little tags on them or whatever so you know what it is, or especially when I'm traveling when you have to have so many different cords. So again, you could overcast, zigzag, do whatever you wanted for this. So I'm finished there with that. And I'm going to cut all of these threads out. And the next thing we're going to do is stitch across the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to fold it like so. So let's see, it says fold the bag right sides together, use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so the side seams from the zipper down, and then use a 1/2 inch seam allowance to stitch across the bottom. So let's do that just like it says. I'm going to line that up. It folds perfect up there on that zipper. And I'm going to see where my 1/2 inch seam allowance is. So I'm going to go ahead and put my foot down and see if this is 3/8 or a 1/2 here. All right, so right there would be a 1/2. So I'm just going to move my needle over till it's lined up with this edge of my zipper, so I can still use the outside edge there. So we're going to start up here at the top, And it comes down straight for just a little bit till right there, and then it turns. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to stitch forward first. You can see how my foot did there. This is a perfect opportunity for me to share this great tool. If you've never gotten one of these, they come in two sizes, okay? This is the smaller one, and what I would do would set it underneath there and set it like that because it levels out my foot. This one would be a little bit too thick for that. And these are simply called the big jigs. And so they are two different sizes. You can actually sew right through them this way. So that's sitting in the back, leveling that out. So I stitched forward, and now I'm going to stitch in reverse. You notice how slowly I'm going. When I'm off that edge, I'm going to lift that back up and set it back underneath there so that I can come back forward, and it just keeps your needle from breaking. Simple as that. All right, so we got through the zipper. We're going to turn here. I'm making sure everything is lined up at the bottom. I'm doing that 1/2-inch seam allowance just by adjusting my needle position. When I get straight down to the bottom, I'm going to reverse. I'm going to flip it over. Might as well just cut these threads off while I'm here. Flip this over, line it up down here at the bottom, set this back behind the needle. Some of you may have something like that that comes with your sewing machine. We're going to stitch forward, we're going to stitch backwards. We're going to come back forward, and at the base of the zipper is when we just start to angle. Almost done, you guys. Start on the bottom here. This isn't thick like that zipper was, so you won't need that. But it just levels it out so you keep your needles from breaking. Now all you have to do is take this and open it up and make your seams meet. And you can either go one to one side, because it really doesn't matter which way you go, or you can open them up because it's going to be the same weight either way. I'm just going to open this up, make sure that seam matches there. Now you'll notice it's angled. It's not straight. So I'm going to turn this like so. I got to pin it first, you guys. So I'm going to take that, because remember we're doing a 1/2-inch seam here. I really don't think that's necessary down here, so I may not do a 1/2 inch. There's so many thicknesses there. Okay. We'll keep it consistent. Pull your bag out flat on that side. Sorry, my shoulder hit the camera again. When you get to the seam, you're going to pivot. So there's my seam, and I'm pivoting. I didn't do quite a 1/2 inch. And you know what? I messed that side up because I didn't back stitch right. So let me just take those few stitches out. I didn't get it folded back flat like I did on this side. I see some of you crying for me. It's okay. It's funny because it wasn't anything but the fabric. It was not, that sounds crazy, but the batting was flat. It's that piece down on the bottom. Okay, here we go. Now, had I not been sewing for you guys, I would have used my white fabric here. But I knew that you couldn't see what I was doing when I was putting this together, so that's why I left that black in there. If I were you, I would change that color. So I'm going to press this open, or push it open. Match up those seams. And the side that I'm stitching first is the side that I'm going to put my pin in. You really don't need it in the other side. And you notice I've got some great big, strong quilting pins. Start in just a little ways. And then don't forget to backstitch. Once you've got that, make it so your bag kind of stands up for you, so you can get it flat. Take that pin out before you get to it. And it always helps with your needle down to lift that foot up just to get all that seam underneath there. So if you're making your own patterns for bags, a little hint is, if you want a 2-inch gusset, you cut out a 1-inch square of the corner of the bag. So now it's showtime. So at this point, you can kind of push your zipper to one way or the other. The other side will just rip. That's why we've got it sealed there. And I'm going to pull this out. Pull this up so you can see a little bit better. And we're going to push this point out with our fingers, or a point turner. You can see that nice little gusset there. And then down here, the same way. And so I thought I cut all my threads, but I've got one more here. This is the top edge of your zipper. I pushed it back too far, it looks like. Let me get a hold of it here. well, come on, there we go. Now I can still go back in there and do my decorative stitch, but if you wanted to do a decorative stitch, I would do it before I put the bag together, because down here you're not going to, you know, it's not going to get clear to the end. But that is our cosmetic bag. Guess I could zip it clear completely closed. You can see down here on the bottom where it's patchworked on that part. Obviously our quilting, and then on the back it's just the plain, and either one is fine, but you know, you can do whatever you want with that bag. This is the larger one. There is a smaller one. The zippers come in navy, gray, tan, red, and black, I believe. They're all on my website, and I put them up right before class, and it looked like they were still going through the motions of it, so I'm going to check it after class. And it will be under the, it will say Zippity-Do-Done. Yeah, I'm starting to sing the Zippity-Do-Dah. Zippity-Do-Done 5521. And you can obviously add your fabric. I'll put on there a kit if you want this same fabric. Thank you for joining me today. We kept pretty much to the time we said we would. And you got to see me do some mistakes and whatever. So thanks for joining me. And if you're interested in one of the kits, I believe they're $25.95, and that includes your batting, the pattern, and the zipper. And like I said, I'm checking into whether you can get extra zippers. The thing is, the pattern is actually printed on the bag, so it's not like you can get like a replacement. But if you wanted to do your bags a little differently, and you just wanted zippers, I think we can get the zippers. So I'm going to be checking on it. So again, thanks everyone for joining me. We'll see you next time. Just keep a watch on there. We'll try to do some Come Sew With Me on different projects so that you can see how we come up with things. All righty. Bye, everyone.